I was not born for oceans. My father planed cedar in a narrow shop at Palos, and I learned the weight of a plank before I learned the weight of a prayer. The world, to me, ended where the horizon sharpened like a knife and cut the sky from the water. But that summer of 1492, the bell in the harbor rang and the crowd roared, and a foreign-sounding man named Cristobal Colon lifted his hand toward the blue edge and said it would open like a door if we pushed hard enough. I signed my name with a clumsy cross and stepped aboard a groaning pile of wood and faith called the Santa Maria. The quay smelled of tar, garlic, sweat, and incense. Women pressed rosaries into our palms and then our palms into their faces. Children waved like flags that did not understand wind. The Pinta bobbed like a restless hound. The Nina looked sly and quick. Our Santa Maria felt like a mother with too many worries and not enough ribs. Priests muttered blessings. Sailors muttered wagers. The anchors came up with a sound like teeth grinding. The sails filled, and Spain slid away until it was only a rumor under gulls. A ship begins as a city and becomes a sentence. At first there are streets, ropes to duck, ladders to climb, rules to learn about who sleeps where and who speaks when. Then it all narrows to subject and verb, we sail. Days traded faces with nights until none of us could keep their names straight. The sea taught us the grammar of want. Water grew stale, bread went to worms. The wind punched or petted us as it pleased. The first weeks were merciful. A round-bellied breeze from the northeast. A sea rippled like a cat's back. Flying fish that arranged themselves helpfully at our feet. And a sun that burned without malice. We stopped at Gomera for water and wood. There I first saw the Admiral's eyes close enough to know why men did not argue with them. They were lit from behind by an idea he would not share with fear. Martin Alonso Pinzon on the Pinta laughed louder than the rest of us and made even bad wine taste better. His brother Vicente on the Nina kept accounts like a confessor keeps sins. We were, between the three ships, a parish of nerve and salt. When we struck west again the wind steadied, and the ocean opened like a road that had always been waiting for our feet. At night the sky spilled its salt onto us. So many stars we could have navigated by any of them and been right in our wrongness. I learned from Pedro the helmsman to read the water by touch. "You can hear it," he said, laying his palm on the rail. "The sea tells you before the wind does." The sea told us many things we did not want to know. Past the Canaries, the water changed color and attitude. We'd gathered in rafts, long ribbons of it shining like brass in the sun, clinging to our hull as if to drag us back to reason. "The ocean is planting," Martin joked, but his laugh was thinner. The needle in the compass sulked and pointed at a not quite north, and the pilot swore at it like a cheating friend. "The pole star moves," the Admiral said, calm as a page in a Bible. "Some men cross themselves more often. Some cross themselves less." Wind fell away for 3 days and left us in a soup of heat and patience. The sails sagged like tired cheeks. We chewed on damp air and on each other. A man named Diego sharpened his knife on the rail until the sound made my teeth ache. Another, swearing he saw a shoreline in the night, woke the watch and was nearly thrown over for it. At dawn there was only the blank page of water, asking us what story we thought we were in. When the wind came back, it brought arguments with it. Why always west? Why not a little north, a little south? What if this was no sea but God's flat table, and we were ants on it, walking forever toward a painted edge? "He is mad," whispered a sailor from the Pinta, spitting into the wake. "Madness can pull a boat as well as wind," I told him and surprised myself by sounding loyal. The Admiral walked like a man counting steps to a gallows he had chosen. At night he spoke to the sky in a language with more hunger than grammar. "Land is near," he told us each morning in a different way. He told us when the swell changed, when the birds changed, when the weeds thickened, when the smell came off the water like breath from a green throat. Hope is a rope. If you grip it hard enough it burns your hands, but still you do not let go. We began to collect signs the way beggars collect coins. A reed, bright as if noon had just licked it. A small branch with berries the color of wounds. A stick, carved by a knife more patient than the sea. Clouds that stacked like mountains, the sort land uses to hide behind. Birds, small, quick, hopping as if the sky were too large for them, moving west as if they had an appointment. Mutiny lives in the corners of a ship. It sleeps near the coils of rope and wakes when men count their doubts like beads. One night the talk curled round the foredeck like smoke. Turn back or throw him over. I stood in that smoke with my hands empty and felt the ship choose between two kinds of fear. The Pinta drew close enough for voices to ride from her deck to ours. Pinzone argued loudly with someone I could not see. Then he laughed once, hard, the way a man laughs when he has just hit a wall he cannot climb. The laughter broke something in the dark, and the others went quiet. On the evening of October 11th, the sea calmed as if to listen. The sky was so crowded with stars it looked like a city lit for a feast. My watch ended at midnight, and I leaned my back against the warm breath of the Santa Maria and promised myself that if dawn brought only blue, I would begin to hate blue. Then the cry, "Tierra! Tierra!" A word made of fire, leapt from the Pinta. Rodrigo de Triana's voice ran along our rigging like a boy on a wall. Men stumbled from hammocks, from prayers, from dreams so brief they had not yet found their endings. The admiral fell to his knees and kissed the deck. I did not. I gripped the gunwale and watched a line darker than night itself thicken into a shore. We did not sleep. We floated on our own hearts until day poured gold into the trough of the sea. Land unwrapped itself. Trees green as a first thought, sand white as the inside of a shell, water so clear it seemed the world had nothing to hide. Birds wrote mad bright sentences in the air. The smell was a feast. Wet earth, crushed leaf, something sweet that tugged at words I had never learned. Men laughed the way men laugh when they are returned to themselves after being lost, and some wept without apology. We lowered the boats. Oars bit water like teeth into bread. The admiral stood in the prow with a banner and with himself, and both were taller than any of us. When my foot found the sand, I felt the whole world tilt and then decide to keep me. I knelt, not because he told me to but because my knees had their own reasons. A cross went up. Latin went up after it, sticky with triumph. Names went down, San Salvador, because the world collects names from winners the way the sea collects bottles. They came from the trees like careful daylight. People with skin sunburnished, bodies painted as if for the delight of color, hair like night, eyes like patience. They wore feathers that made the birds look twice, and strings of shells that contained more ocean than we had crossed. We froze as if silence could be polite. A young man stepped forward with fruit cupped in his hands like an argument for kindness. A woman laughed softly and touched her child's hair, as if to reassure it that the strangers were part of mourning. We offered glass beads, little mirrors, bells. One of them lifted a mirror and looked at his face as if the face had been hiding behind a curtain all his life. Our words and theirs met like two dogs sniffing, wary and interested. The admiral opened his hands wide to show he carried no weapon and also to show he could carry anything he liked. He gestured at the sky and the cross and the flag and the ships. We gestured at our mouths for food and our mouths for thanks. They made a game of our ignorance, smiling around it like water around rock. I tasted a fruit that broke on my tongue like honey and rain. I watched a child show a sailor how to crack a nut with a stone and laughed when the sailor pretended the stone had hurt him. A man pressed my palm to a tree as if the tree had a pulse I could learn to love. We were, for an hour, only neighbors, but a ship carries more than men, carries questions with knives inside them. While we marveled, others measured. The admiral told his book with his eyes. Gold in their ears, gold in their ornaments, gold perhaps upstream in the green mouth of the island. He asked gently, then less gently, then with gifts, then with gestures that said a gift not taken is an insult. They pointed and smiled and were confused that our hunger was not for bread. Smoke from our pipes folded into the blue. Smoke from their fires folded into ours. The two lines of smoke spoke a language that did not need us. We sailed along the island's rim and found more coves like bowls held out for soup. More people who watched us with a curiosity that did not yet include fear. The Nina skipped ahead. The Pinta sulked, then sprinted, like brothers with unhealed games between them. When night fell, drums from the shore spoke across water in words we pretended were just drums. On deck, a sailor named Hernando told a story about a priest who saw angels in his soup and nobody corrected him because soup feels holy when you have been alone with salt. Days crowded forward, each with a new mouth to astonish us. Other islands, other faces, other birds that laughed in colors I did not know existed until they existed in front of me. We traded beads for parrots and bells for cotton and promise for promise. The admiral's confidence grew leaves. He wrote letters to kings that he would never lick shut with his own tongue. We followed him because following was what we had practiced. He was good at standing where the world was about to change. Not all hours were sweetness. We quarreled over nothing like men who had eaten too much wind. A sailor took a golden nose ring and the admiral took the sailor's idea of liberty. Someone hit someone else with the flat of a blade and learned the taste of apology. We were not better for seeing a new world. We were only ourselves in a room with more windows. I remember one storm that approached with the manners of a king. The sea went the color of lead. The wind powdered the wave tops to milk. The sky wrinkled its brow and then forgot we were small. We climbed, we fell, we begged. The Santa María complained in every timber. Every rope twanged like a catgut prayer. I promised the saints anything they asked if they would teach the wind to be tired. Morning came, we were not drowned. I had no gifts left to give. We cracked the Santa María on a reef on Christmas Day because even mothers make mistakes. She leaned into her hurt and would not be talked out of it. We built a fort from her bones and called it Navidad because men hide their fear behind names that taste like hope. The people of the island brought us food and smiles and helped us carry our failure ashore as if it were a child too heavy for one man. The admiral left men there with a cross and a rule, and sailed on with the Nina and a dream like a map in his mouth. I will not tell you that the new world was only wonder. I saw a girl's eyes go from proud to cautious in the space of a smile. I saw a sailor grab and another sailor pretend not to notice. I saw a leader weigh a village on the scale of a crown. But I also saw a man lift a stranger's child out of a wave because the child was a child. I saw shells threaded into bracelets so lovely I nearly forgot to breathe. I saw moonlight turn a beach into a road of silver, and the footprints of those who had danced there earlier look like letters written for a god who prefers to read at night. When at last our prow pointed east again, the ocean had stopped being a wall and started being a habit. The horizon, which used to say no, now said more. Storms still had teeth. Hunger still had a voice. Fear still knew our names. But we also had a new name, though we did not yet know it. We were men who had seen the world grow another room. On the home sea I stood by the rail at dawn and watched a fish break the skin of the water, and so it shut behind him with a single glittering stitch. I thought of my father, shaping a plank so true it would not warp even when rain scolded it. I thought of the boy I had been who believed the horizon was the end of sense. I thought of the people on the islands, who had taught me how a fruit ought to taste, who had laughed at my clumsy hands and handed me the right stone for the right nut. I imagined their fires at night, bright coins in a green purse, and wondered what we had left them besides beads and stories and a hunger they had not ordered. When I set foot on the quay again, Spain smelled like bread. Bells rang as if they had been practicing the whole time we were gone. Mouths opened for news and for money and for blessing and for gossip. I put my palm on the same post I had touched the morning we left and felt in the splinters the faint pulse of something that had learned to beat inside me different from before. I had been to the place where maps end and seen that maps are cowards. The world, it turns out, is not round in the way a coin is round. It is round in the way a story is round. One chapter asks for the next. If you ask what we discovered, I will not say a continent. I will say a smell, the ripe green breath that lifts from a shore you do not have a word for yet. I will say the sound of someone laughing at your fear and then taking your hand anyway. I will say the taste of a fruit that teaches your tongue a new prayer. I will say a door, and behind it a room full of doors, and behind those doors both light and shadow, and your own face in a mirror you did not know you were carrying. And I will say this: the horizon has not ended since.